Hi, we're out on the range today, so please bear with gunfire you hear in the background. And today, once again, we're talking about .38 Special ammunition. Now, recently we did a presentation on Winchester's .38 Special standard pressure train and defend ammunition. And what I discovered was that the defend ammunition performed poorly, which brought up the question, is there any standard pressure .38 Special hollow point that does perform well? Okay, a little background. Today, most people who are carrying a .38 Special are carrying some kind of snub-nose revolver, and they're loading it with plus P ammunition. Now, plus P means added pressure. It's a higher pressure round that, depending on what kind of ammo and what kind of gun you have, will give you 100, 150 feet per second more velocity. And that's a lot in a .38 Special, but it comes with a couple of downsides. You have more noise, more recoil, and some .38 revolvers, especially older ones, are not rated to use plus P ammunition. So some people, to avoid recoil and so forth, will choose to use standard pressure, and some people are relegated to standard pressure because of the firearm they have. Now the thing is, hollow point bullets are velocity based, and I've said this before, but the faster you propel a hollow point, the more expansion you'll get, up to a point. And in a .38 Special, it's already fairly low velocity, and then you put it in a snub-nose revolver, sometimes you may not meet expansion threshold. And that's what we discovered with the Winchester Defend ammunition, at least in the medium I was shooting. So I want to see, are there any standard pressure .38 Special hollow points that will meet expansion threshold? Well, I brought some with me today. Now, this is Hornady American Gunner .38 Special 125 grain jacketed hollow point. And here's Winchester Kinetic HE, which is a 110 grain jacketed hollow point, and then Hornady Critical Defense, which is a 110 grain FTX projectile, a ballistic tip. So let's shoot these and see how they do. Now I've got 4 targets set up, and I'll go back and shoot these from 10 yards. Now in talking about recoil, I've got my Smith & Wesson Model 638, which is a very light revolver, and I have it loaded with Remington Golden Saber .38 Special plus P 125 grain jacketed hollow point. So I'll shoot this and we'll see how much recoil I can feel and how much you can see, and then we'll shoot our standard pressure ammunitions for comparison. And now we'll shoot our Hornady American Gunner 125 grain jacketed hollow point. And now our Hornady Critical Defense 110 grain FTX. And our Winchester Kinetic HE 110 grain jacketed hollow point. You'll notice that the speed loaders are getting a little hung up. This grip doesn't work very well with these particular speed loaders. Let's take a look at the target. Now these targets tell us several things. The first group I fired, the plus P ammunition, you can see it's a fairly good group, but not really centered with where I was aiming. The other groups seem to be more centered. Now this one has a flyer, but that was just me. And as far as being centered, probably our best group was the Hornady Critical Defense 110 grain FTX. And so part of the ammunition selection process when you're talking about concealed carry type of guns that do not have adjustable sights is finding a type of ammunition that will hit where your non-adjustable sights are aimed. Now as far as recoil goes, the first group, again, that was the plus P ammunition, and I could feel a lot more recoil with that. But could you see more? So if you're going for reduced recoil, it would appear the standard pressure rounds are the way to go. But the real question is, with this standard pressure ammunition, are we going to get the appropriate level of penetration and expansion with it? Let's put that to the test. And we'll shoot the meat target as a definitive test. Now this meat target has pig ears on the front to simulate skin. Yes, pig ears out of the meat department at the grocery. Then pork chop pectorals, then pork ribs, then our bag of oranges lung tissue, more pork ribs on the back, 4 layers of t-shirt on the front and back, the high-tech fleece bullet stop, and we'll shoot it from 7 yards, and we'll start with our Hornady American Gunner 125 grain jacketed hollow point. So how'd we do? Well, here's one of our pork chop pectorals, and this hole you see is actually 2 bullet holes. 2 projectiles hit very close together, and that's all the damage they did. As far as our ribs on the front, where the bullets hit a rib, broke it. You'll notice occasionally I use words like shattered and pulverized. No, in this case, broke it. There's mediocre damage to our orange lung tissue, and on the back, they penetrated the ribs. And all of the projectiles were stopped by the t-shirt or the first layer of fleece. Let me show you a close-up of the projectiles. And there's all 4 of the projectiles from our Hornady American Gunner 125 grain ammo, and the expansion is non-existent. Now we've got a new meat target set up, and we'll shoot from 7 yards with our Winchester Kinetic HE, which is a 110 grain jacketed hollow point. Well, our ribs on the front have bullet holes in them, but not particularly impressive ones, and actually none of these hit a rib. Our bag of orange's lung tissue has mediocre damage to it, and again, all 4 projectiles were stopped by the t-shirt on the back or the first layer of fleece. Let me show you a close-up of these. And with our Winchester Kinetic 110 grain hollow points, we see 1 with marginal expansion and 3 with no expansion to speak of. Okay, one more. We'll try our Hornady Critical Defense 110 grain FTX ballistic tip. Let's see if we get any performance out of this. So with our 110 grain FTX, here's our ribs on the front with some fairly impressive holes, and where the bullets hit the ribs, shattered them. Some pretty good damage to our bag of orange's lung tissue, and all 4 projectiles were stopped by the t-shirt on the back. None of them even made it to the fleece. So it looks like we got some pretty good damage, but perhaps not really great penetration. Now let me show you a close-up of these projectiles. And here's all 4 of our projectiles and the red ballistic tips, and that's pretty good and consistent expansion. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Well, the original question was, is there a .38 Special standard pressure hollow point ammunition that can deliver adequate expansion? And it would appear the answer is no. Between the Winchester Defend ammunition that we shot previously and the Hornady American Gunner and the Winchester Kinetic HE that we shot today, none of them had expansion that I'd call even mediocre. In fact, just my observation of damage to the meat target and penetration through the meat target and the fleece bullet stop behind it, it looked like they were all outdone by this Winchester training ammunition, which is just a 130 grain full metal jacket flat nose projectile. Now, flat nose projectiles can do some damage without requiring expansion. But the one exception to all of this, of course, was the Hornady Critical Defense 110 grain FTX ballistic tip projectile, which, although that did a lot of damage to our meat target and had really good projectile expansion, it was the only ammunition where none of the projectiles made it through the t-shirt on the back of the target. So even though it did good damage to our relatively small meat targets that we use today, I'm skeptical about its performance in terms of penetration if you had to shoot anything really big with it. So what's the real bottom line? I'd say if you're going to use a .38 Special, especially a snub nose, stick with plus P ammunition if you can. And if you can't, you may be best served just by going back to the old school 158 grain lead projectile, especially if you can come up with one that's some kind of flat nose or a semi-wad cutter configuration. So as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the .38 Special standard pressure video.